Hello everyone. My name is Merlin Campbell. I am an audiovisual artist from Quebec, Canada. I completed a BFA from Concordia University and the SS in digital music at the University of Montreal. I am currently pursuing my master's degree in composition and sound creation at the Faculty of Music of the University of Montreal under the supervision of Myriam Boucher. I am also a research member of the OICRM, which is a research center called Interdisciplinary Observatory of Creation and Research in Music. My research creation interests for my master's degree are oriented around video music, relationship between sound and image, immersion, and monumental institute, audiovisual installations and performances. My pieces are essentially created to be broadcast in unconventional controlled environments. By unconventional, what I mean is that is anything that is not a concert hall or a stage. And by controlled environment, I mean indoor environments like black boxes, white cubes, halls, lofts, rooms of all sorts, etc. So to give you an example, this is one creation I've done recently, and I've presented it during a festival, Ultrason in Montreal. So yeah, as you can see, my artistic work requires the creation of multi-screen and multi-speaker devices that I conceptualize according to the space where I broadcast my compositions. My pieces are generally fixed media or installations, but yeah, right now I'm currently migrating toward performance. So yeah, as I said, this is an example of a piece called Hypnotic Study 1, which is a dual screen stereophonic installation I presented at Ultrason in Montreal. And it's a piece exploring hypnosis through video music, basically. So I'm going to show you an example, an excerpt, sorry. Oh, sorry. Raise the volume a little bit. So yeah, this is the first piece I created toward my multi-screen, multi-speaker. That was the first experiment. Still stereo, but I'm moving toward like 8 speakers and more screen and more monumental, more bigger. But today I'm not here to talk about this piece. I'm here to talk about Nuée, the piece I presented yesterday. So it's called Nuée Chapitre 1. It could be translated as Clouds or Swarms, Chapter 1, which is the first fixed media video music composition, which led me to direct my master's degree research creation project towards an environmental practice. So concretely, I will talk about the concept of the piece. Then I'll talk about the extra musical subject of the piece, which is The Greatest Snow Goose. And then I'll talk about the creative process. Then I'll relate all this with my master's project, and I'll make a conclusion and question for you. So just before we go further, I'll show you another excerpt for those, like an excerpt of the pieces I presented yesterday, for those who weren't there yesterday. Yet. I started working on this project, I had no environmental artistic approach at all. The conceptual idea came from an emotional subject, an interest linked to the Quebec folklore, which is the greatest snow goose. So, what does this bird look like actually? Looks like this. The greatest snow goose is really impregnated in the collective imagination of Quebecers. They mark the passing of time, the cycle of season. They are seen and heard like twice a year when they migrate to the United States for winter and to the Arctic for summer. So the arrival of the geese announces the arrival of spring, which tells that summer is coming, and then fall when winter is coming. So it's really like a time marker. So many French Canadian artists have been inspired by the greatest snow geese, like for example Jean-Paul Riopel, the famous Quebec painter who painted L'Hommage à Rosa Luxembourg, which is like tribute to Rosa Luxembourg, a masterful work of 40 meters long to pay tribute to Johnny Mitchell when she died, because Jean-Paul Riopel was with Johnny Mitchell for around 25 years. And another example of the greatest snow goose influence in the French Canadian culture is La Bottine Souriante, a French Canadian traditional music group from Quebec, who sang a song called L'An 2033, le manifeste d'un vieux chasseur d'oies, which could be translated into the year 2033, the manifesto of an old geese hunter, which tells the story of a man who goes hunting geese on an island called Ile du Pas, Island, but can no longer find any. Sorry, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. But he can no longer find any geese because they all disappeared due to pollution. So he started writing a letter to the minister and complaining about it. And anyway, the song is great. If you want to listen to it, just come and I'll make you listen to it. This is a song I heard frequently when I was young. Also, my uncles were hunters, so they hunted the greatest snow goose. So that's really where the conceptual idea, the desire, the spontaneous impulse to film and record geese came from. So visually, the flights of the greatest snow geese create a lot of mass movements, but also individual movements, offering like the possibility to work with visual granulation from filmed images. On the sound level, the snow geese are very vocal. They have a very singular call, like it goes like something like walk, 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 walk. You know, I'll show you an example. I'm not a really good bird sound interpreter, but still, it sounds a bit like that. So when they are at rest, we kind of hear them individually, sort of, and when they fly away, they form a very dense and extremely loud sound mass. So the expectation of the flight is really an adrenaline rush. They rest on the water. It's like an absolute wonder because there's like literally thousands of them. And it is extremely imposing and impressive to see and hear thousands of geese all gathered in the same place. And honestly, the contrast between the moment they are at rest and when they fly away, it's striking. So when they take off, they form a big mass. They fly in circle in the sky. They create random circular movements that changes the perception of depth. And suddenly they gradually move away, fly away to the surrounding fields to go feed during the day, and they come back to sleep at night on the water. So for all these reasons, I thought that it was a beautiful raw material to explore. So let me show you a small excerpt. Although it doesn't give justice of what it is really in reality, it's still, you're going to get a sense of it. Yeah, as I said, it doesn't give justice of the real thing. But yeah, it's massive, and it's not the biggest crowd of birds that there is in Quebec, as I'll tell you in a minute. So yeah, um, the greatest snow goose. Where do they dwell exactly? Well, for wintering season, their habitat is on the U.S. Atlantic coast, from New Jersey to South Carolina. And the period of time they spend out there is from December to March, so around 4 months. And the migration uh, to breed in a nesting area starts in spring, around April, and it goes up until the end of May, so around 2 months. And the breeding nesting season happens in the Arctic and the Below Island. I'll show you on the map where all these places are. In Nunavut is home to the world's largest breeding colony of the greatest snow goose. So they spend the period of time they spend out there is from June to August, so it's around 3 months. And the migration to the wintering area, so back to the East Coast, is in fall from September to November, so it takes around 3 months. It's a little longer because probably because there's babies and small geese. So yeah, this is Mexico. This is Montreal. This is I surround like this is Delaware because Delaware and New Jersey there are two places where there's a massive concentration of snow geese during the wintering season. But it's really from New Jersey to South Carolina. There's like smaller areas where they gather as well. And this is Below Island up in the Arctic, so it's pretty far and hard to reach out there. So the dates may vary slightly from year to year, depending on the weather. Some important staging areas on the migratory stopover in the St. Lawrence Valley are Bids 5, Cap Tourmente, and Île-aux-Oies. I'll show you on the map where it is as well. They spend about 3 weeks along the St. Lawrence Valley River staging area. In some places, at some times, there is a concentration of more than 500,000 of greater snow geese at the same time. So what you just saw was about, it wasn't even like 100,000 birds. So you can imagine there's places where there's even more, like 10 times more than what we've seen on the screen easily. So Below Island, where it is, it's up north in the Arctic. To get there, you got to get to a small town sort of village, which is called Pond Inlet, sorry. And you get there by plane. And then to get to Below Island, you get to take an helicopter. That's the only way you can get there. And it's really like restricted. There's a research center there, as I'll tell you in a minute. So yeah, Quebec. What does it look like exactly? We're gonna get closer and closer. So this is Quebec City. This is Montreal. Here we got New Jersey, Delaware, and as we zoom in, this is the St. Lawrence Valley. This is Montreal. This is Quebec. This is where I live. It's about an hour from Montreal. And this is where I went. This is Victoriaville. So to film the geese you saw on screen, I went to a small reservoir called Reservoir Baudet. Uh, I'll tell you about it in a minute. And this is one of the hotspots I told you about, like Bids 5. And this is the island that the French-Canadian traditional music group was singing about in their song. Ilsba is right there. Yeah. And then other hotspots are, well, this is Quebec. Yeah, Quebec is a hotspot in Quebec. It's a nice place to go. But I mean, this is Île-aux-Oies. And to get to Île-aux-Oies, you got to go to Montmagny and take a ferry. And during winter, you got to take a plane. And this is Cap Tourmente, another place where there's a lot of snow. So yeah, the creative process. As I said originally, I wanted to create a video music work from images of swarms and sound recordings of the greatest snow goose. So I looked for the closest place to my home to film and make sound recordings, and I ended up at the Reservoir Baudet in Victoriaville. About, as I said, an hour and a half away by car. We arrived around 5 a.m. because them really early birds, and set up like 2 cameras to film from 2 different angles, and we also like positioned the microphone to proceed to a stereophonic sound recording. Seeing and hearing like the great snow geese take flight, as I said, is an unique immersive experience. And this was my first time experiencing this, and it totally mesmerized me. If you have a chance, I strongly suggest to do it, to experiment. So I was totally absorbed by the visual and the immensity of the phenomenon, and I completely forgot about the sound recording. Sorry, lady. But yeah, I completely forgot about the sound. So in the end, the sound was not very good. But back in the studio, I worked with, the images I had. So I worked in Adobe Premiere Pro to choose the best images, desaturate them all of colors. To create the visual, I superimposed, applied rotation, enlarged, shrunk the images to generate and vary the textures and the movements of the images to renew the visual discourse. And this is how I created the visual orchestration of the piece. As for the sound, since I didn't have good sound recordings, I created feedback loop with the no input mixing techniques. I used an old mixer and inserted reverb, distortion, delay, EQ pedals in the feedback loops, and I worked with this material for the sound orchestration. So strangely enough, I ended up being able to create sound objects that sounded like birds or echoing in a way the cries of the greatest snow geese. Echoing wasn't like really like the quack 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 thing I tried to mimic. But this was followed by, a work of editing, micro montage, and of sound and visuals, while paying particular attention to the relationship between sound and image to renew the audiovisual discourse of my composition with the help of different synchronicities. So I didn't really think about the precise theme during the creation of the work. It rather appeared by itself while I was creating the piece. So the subject really crystallized itself after I finished it. So the piece can be interpreted in many ways, but there are some elements that are clear to me, such as mass migration, of course, swarms of birds passing by a city, like meeting hunters, geese shot by hunters falling to the ground, geese passing through a storm, and the general chaos caused by climate change. All these elements are represented either by sound and or images. So after creating the piece, I realized that the sounds and the visuals of the natural world around me affected me more than I thought, and that environment was part of my artistic practice in the end. So it is this experience, this infatuation of for environment and the greater snow goose that I want to share through my video music works. So in the end, I tried to represent the physical, cognitive, and emotional chaos that the greater snow geese experience during their migration process between the Arctic and the east coast of the United States. So what about my master's project and all that? Seeing and hearing the greater snow geese in real life is an immersive experience that is consistent and connected with the immersive approach that I am working on my master's project. So the idea of working with the greater snow geese on a monumental multi-screen, multi-speaker practice makes sense. What I would like to create is a series of works that give the impression that we are surrounded, immersed by the greater snow geese, to demonstrate how beautiful and impressive these birds are. So one of the objectives is also to sensitize the public and to start a dialogue with people about the importance of environment and climate change through video music and the greater snow geese. My bad. So yeah, to go further in my research work, I contacted specialists of the fauna and the flora of Quebec, such as biologists, naturalists, and ecologists. And from that moment on, a reflection was triggered on several questions just appeared and led me to deepen the subject with these scientists for next pieces. Questions such as what is the behavior of the greatest snow geese? Um, what is their way of life, how they reproduce, what are their nesting and wintering areas, and what is their trajectory of the migratory corridor. And by the way, I didn't mention it, but it's really like the St. Lawrence Valley is the hot spot for them to stop. It's a major stopover because it's one of the places where they get most food before they can reach the Arctic because it's like 4,000 kilometers of flight for them. So yeah, what are these staging areas and where do they rest in these areas, what is their relationship with the fauna and the flora, and what is their role in this ecosystem, what are the impacts of climate change on the species, and what is their relationship with human, etc. So yeah, through this research, my objective is really just to deepen my personal knowledge on the species and on environment and climate change. Ultimately, all these research will orient and nourish my creative work and allow me to fulfill my need to do my part for the environment and to activate a social commitment in my artistic practice. It will help me to deepen my subject as well and to develop new materials. What is really encouraging so far is that the reaction of the biologists, naturalists, and ecologists that I've spoken to is very positive, and they are willing to collaborate with me in my research creation project. For example, I am working on a collaboration with scientists to follow them while they work on Île aux Oies, Goose Island, to film and record the geese up close without harming them. I also contacted an ecologist who travels to Below Island because, as I said, it's really expensive to get there and it's restricted. There's not a lot of place where you can sleep, and it costs a lot of money to bring food, to bring fuel because they need like energy to do their research out there. So it's not everybody that can go there. It's possible, but right now I'm not thinking about going there. Maybe in the future, but for now, I just contacted an ecologist who travels to Below Island in the Arctic for research work, and who also specializes in video filming to obtain images of Below Island and the greater snow goose out there. So, on top of that, I have the chance to be in contact with some professors and researchers who oversee the Below Island Research Center, which is managed by the Centre d'études nordiques, the Center for Nordic Studies, which is linked to Laval University in Quebec City. The researchers out there basically work on Arctic fauna, flora, climate change, and of course the greater snow goose and other type of birds, animals. So yeah, finally, all the scientists I met agreed to meet with me and discuss my research project, and I was also provided with several scientific articles to undertake my research properly. So yeah, what's next? The next places I would like to go film and make sound recordings are Bates 5, Capitol Mountain, and Lausois, places I mentioned before. So I got to start right now planning these trips because as soon as I come back from Morelia, the migration and the nesting breeding areas, the migration to the nesting and breeding areas in the Arctic is about to begin. So I gotta plan everything, set dates, and rent equipment, and it's a lot of management to organize, but it's gonna be cool. um, so yeah, where are these places? I showed it to you earlier, but I'm just gonna point it again to refresh our memory. So Montreal is there. So this is Base 5, and this is Capitol Mount, and this is Île aux Oies. So yeah, so as a conclusion, I just want to mention that it is really through the creation of this piece that I started to research creation project on environment, and more precisely on the greater snow geese. And by the creation of video music, I developed and increased. I say increased because I already was sensitive to environment, but it increased my sensitivity towards environment to work on this project. So this sensitivity towards environment is precisely what I wish to develop with the public by appealing them with video music and the greater snow geese. What we have to keep in mind as well is that the migratory stopover in the St. Lawrence Valley is one of the places in the world where there are swarms of the greatest snow geese of this size. You're talking, like, as I said earlier, hundreds of thousands of geese at the same time at the same place. This is really unique. And in the end, what I want to create is I want to create is immersive experiences that are sensitive to this incredible natural wealth. and that we are unfortunately in danger of losing because of climate change. So that's why I was here this week, and that's why I'm here to share with you all an exchange about environment, sound, and video music, and to learn more about the work of my colleagues and whose creations in the end touch extra musical subjects related to mine. I think that's the best way to go forward and do our little part, small, the best we can do as individuals in society. So yeah, before I end, I'd like to say a major thank you to Rodrigo Sigal. Uh, I'm really flattered and honored by the invitation. I'd like to say thanks as well to the SEMA staff for their generosity and warm welcome. I also have to mention with pleasure the OICRM and SOCAN Foundation for the grants that they provided us to come here. To Sabrina Caron for helping me filming and recording sounds. To Simon Chioni, because he's an amazing artist and a traveling partner. And to Miriam Boucher as well for her trust, guidance, and patience and generosity. It is extremely precious. Thank you. And thank you all for your attention as well.
Gracias.